Hey, y'all. Welcome back to Lemonaders with Trinity Speaks. Thank you so much for joining us for episode 2 of our podcast. The title of this episode is God Hates Me. So I'm laying in my bed one night and I'm just about to get into that good sleep. You know, that good sleep where if you're woken up, you catch yourself kind of drooling on yourself, like the drool was about to happen. And you wake up and you kind of like, wiping that drool off of your mouth. And I woke up because I heard the doorbell ring. And the first thing that went through my mind was, I'm not getting up. I'm not getting up. I told him not to forget his key. I told him to call his kids and tell his kids to leave the door open for him. I'm not getting up this time because you know what? I'm sick and tired of everybody in this house not respecting my hustle and the fact that I have to get up in the morning. I'm not getting up. And the doorbell rang and the doorbell rang and I refused. And I just knew that my phone was about to ring. I was like, he ain't even called me. And the doorbell rings. And at this point, I'm like really irritated because not only did he forget his key, but nobody else in the house is going to get up and answer this door. So finally, I hear my sister getting up. And I'm like, okay, I can go back to this good sleep. And I'm preparing myself to hear him come into the room. And I'm either going to hear the sound of Power on Stars or I'm going to hear the sound of ESPN because he's about to come in and get caught up on his shows or get caught up on his sports. And so I know that I'm going to be irritated and I'm going to start kicking my feet to let him know that I'm irritated because he's waking me up and disrupting my sleep. And he doesn't understand that I got to get up in the morning and perform and do a training. The next sound that I hear is someone screaming in my house. And I'm laying there and I'm like, this man is going to come in this house and he's going to be like, what is going on now? The scream was foreign. I thought it was my niece. And so I keep hearing the screaming. And he doesn't walk into the room. And when I walk out of my room, I see my sister standing at my daughter's bedroom door. And as I get closer, I realize that the screaming isn't my niece. The screaming is coming from my daughter. And when I get to my daughter's bedroom door, I see her sitting up in her bed and she's just screaming. And I look at my sister and my sister turns around and she says, Trin, there's 2 men at the door. And I said, what happened? What happened? And she was like, they just need you to go downstairs. And she's like, sis, I'm so sorry. Sis, I'm so sorry. And so I don't even grab a robe. I just run downstairs. And when I get to the stairs, there's 2 men in suits standing at my front door. And I go to the door and I ask them, how can I help them? And they said, Mrs. Ellis, there's been an accident. And I said, well, where is he? And they said, I'm sorry, ma'am, but it's confirmed, like he's deceased. And I just remember screaming, no, and walking backwards and screaming no, and walking backwards and screaming no, and slamming the door in their face. And I was screaming, no. And my son-in-law went outside to get the details. And then my son comes downstairs. And he walks over to them and they try to reach out to shake his hand. And all I remember is screaming, "Don't touch him." And the men just pulled their hands away from my son. It was like in that moment, I just felt like they were contaminated, like they were evil or they were dangerous, or somehow something was going to happen to my son as a result of them touching him. The next thing I know, I'm sitting in a chair and my mother-in-law comes out of her bedroom. And she walks over to me and she's just asking, "What happened? What happened?" And in that moment, I realized that I'm going to have to tell my mother-in-law, who just lost her oldest son 6.5 months ago, that now her second son, her only other son, her youngest son, her baby boy, is dead. The next thing I remember saying is, "God hates me. God hates me. There is not a God who could love me, who could know me, and take my husband, my rock, the man who saved me from myself over and over and over again. There's not a God who could say that he loved me and knew me, who would think that that was something that I could survive, something that I could endure." I do not know how I survived that moment. And if you've had a moment like that, then you're probably able to identify with all of the emotions that were going through my body in that moment. Grief has wreaked havoc on my life more times than any person should have to experience grief. And when people ask me what surprises me about grief, this time around, I say, what surprises me about grief in this moment is that there was a point in my life when I thought I was good at it. There was a point in my life where I thought anything could happen to me and I could handle it because of how much tragedy and trauma and grief and loss I had experienced in my life. But what many people don't know is that when you've felt unlovable and when you have felt unseen, forgotten, insignificant, when you've been abused and neglected and abandoned, and the hands that were supposed to protect you were the hands that choked you, and the hands that were supposed to hold you were the hands that hurt you, and the hands that were supposed to help you were the ones that left you. And in spite of that brokenness, you allow yourself to love, and you allow yourself to be loved, and you allow yourself to be cared for, and you allow yourself to feel safe. And then, in spite of all the years that you didn't allow yourself to experience joy and didn't allow yourself to be happy, not because you didn't want to be, but because you were afraid that if you allowed yourself to be, it was just going to be snatched away from you like every other time. But you had somebody in your life who was consistent, who made you feel safe. And so finally, you allowed yourself to feel love. And you stopped holding your breath just long enough to allow yourself to be happy. To allow yourself to live and stop being afraid of the next bad thing happening. And you think that all of the worst that could happen has already happened. And so now it's time for you to breathe and be free. And give yourself fully to this thing called life. And so when my husband was killed, it knocked the life out of me. It knocked the will to live out of me. And all that I could say was, God hates me. One night in January of 2021, I got a message in Facebook Messenger from a cousin who had been looking for me and my sisters for over a decade. I had never met any of my father's relatives. I spent most of my childhood in foster care. And here we are just living. And like something that would happen in a movie. As a matter of fact, the first thing I said to my cousin when I talked to him on the phone was, this is some shit that only happens in the movies. I was connected to family. And on March 1st, 2021, my oldest brother surprised me. And he flew out to California to meet me and my sisters for the first time. And I have a video of me walking hand in hand with him and me telling him that I felt like God hadn't forgot about me. And all this time, I felt like nobody wanted us and nobody cared about us, and we felt so disconnected. And then this family finds us, and it's so beautiful. And it's amazing. It feels like a miracle is happening. And it's one more thing where I felt like, dang, my life is turning around. It's getting good. God hasn't forgotten about me. He hasn't forgotten about me. That day, my husband met my oldest brother for the first time. That day, my husband left for work. And less than 48 hours later, my husband never returned home from work. The morning of March 3rd, 2021 was one of the hardest, most devastating most life-changing, torturous, excruciatingly painful moments I've ever had to endure in my life. I didn't want to live. I can't even begin to count how many times I cried just saying, I don't want to live without him. I always told him that I didn't want to know life without him. And then when life forced me to know life without him, I didn't want it anymore. I made a list of all the things that I thought God would require me to do before he would give me permission to die, to go and be with Taj. And that list included Taj's funeral, Taj's internment at the National Cemetery in Riverside, moving, finding a way to make money to take care of my kids, establishing my trust, and getting a trust for my son, my daughter, and my granddaughters. There are a few other things on the list that I've executed. And I'm still here. I made my list, but clearly God may not have been in agreement with my list. But I made my list nonetheless. And so when people ask me, Trinity, how have you accomplished so much in the time since Taj has died? I give credit to that list. I had a plan. And like with every other situation that I've dealt with that involved someone in my life dying, I went into business mode. I go into business mode because it's my way of coping. It's my way of staying busy and not dealing with the emotions that are associated with the grief. And for somebody like me that has felt like her life was so out of control in so many different instances, I want to try and be in control when something uncontrollable happens. And so I put my focus on just making sure that everything is done with dignity, with class, with grace. Everything is executed with precision. And that's where I put my energy. And in putting my energy there, I'm able to function. And so even though there were days when I couldn't get out of bed, and even though there were days when I would count the number of days that it had been since I'd taken a shower, and for somebody like me that is a hygiene freak, you know something was wrong for me not to shower every day. But when my hair started falling out and I wasn't eating and I wasn't drinking enough water, I had went to go and get lab work done. And I had to go back 3 different times because I was so dehydrated. They couldn't find a vein that wouldn't collapse. is when I knew that if I didn't change things, I just might die. Or I was going to become a burden to my children. And I would rather die than to become a burden to my children. But in that moment, when they weren't able to find veins for a third time, I was like, all right, Trin, enough is enough. You're going to have to do what you got to do. Because if you're going to be here, you want it to be a life worth living. And I've always said that our children will learn their resilience through how resilient they see their parents. They will know their resilience by how many times they see us get up. They will know their resilience by how many times they see us not quit. They will know their resilience by how many times they see us push through things that are hard, push through things that are painful, push through things that are life-changing. I tell my kids all the time that their mama ain't no punk. And even though they saw me putting up a brave face every day as I got up to handle stuff, I knew that I wasn't taking care of me. And I knew that my children were scared for me. As a matter of fact, when we were going through our grief counseling, my kids admitted that they were afraid that something was going to happen to me. And no matter how much I tried to reassure them that I was okay, all they knew is that their dad went to work one day and he never came home. And they couldn't even remember whether or not they said goodbye or if they saw him before he left. And so it was a very logical and rational fear for them to have. And so we're sitting in that therapy session and the grief therapist says, well, Mom, can you tell your children everything that you're doing to make sure that you live? I wanted to slap that therapist. I was like, does this bitch know how much I'm going through, what it's taking me to get up and even be on this call with her, with my kids in the midst of COVID and everything else that we dealing with right now? And she want me to give them a list of things that I'm doing to make sure that I live? On the spot, I'm thinking, I want to die. I really don't want to be in this motherfucking no more. That's what I'm thinking in my head. And so I'm coming up with my list and I'm like, I haven't missed taking my medication at all since your dad died. I get up. I make sure you guys are okay. I took a shower yesterday, I think. I brush my teeth every day. I drink some water. I'm going to eat today. I'm going to keep showing up for these grief therapy sessions. I know that every day is not going to be perfect. But what I can tell you is that I'm going to keep fighting for you. And every day may not be executed with precision, but I'm going to get it right or I'm going to die trying. I can promise you in this moment that I'm not going to give up, that I'm going to keep trying. And that was the best that I could do in that moment. But there's one thing that I've always done for my children, and that's continually strive to be a better me. There have been moments, especially as my daughter approached adulthood, that I got really anxious about my parenting journey and wondering whether or not I had taught her enough, whether or not I had said enough, whether or not she would hear my voice when I'm not in her presence. Have I been enough for her? And then one morning I woke up and I was like, you know what, Trin? As long as you're alive, as long as she's alive, there's an opportunity for you to be a better mom. And I'm going to be her mama until the day I die. And so, like with anything else, one day turned into 2, 2 days turned into 3, 3 days turned into 4, and 4 turned into more. And here we are almost 2 years later. And even though the pain is still unbelievably unbearable at times, I'm still here. I'm still in the game. I'm still fighting the fight. I'm still walking the walk. And I'm still talking the talk. And I live my life every day trying to be an example to myself and to my children of what's possible. I get to decide how I show up. I get to decide what I choose to do with my story. I get to decide how I'm remembered. I get to decide the version of me that my children get to see. I get to decide what type of ancestor I want to be. The reason why I started the Lemonaders podcast, it was inspired by a post that I did on Facebook well over 10 years ago. And it came up one day in my Facebook memories. And I said, you know what, girl? You did that. You ever have that time when you are reading something that you wrote and you're like looking at it and you reading it and you're like, girl, that was good. Girl, you wrote that? It was one of those moments where I was like, I did that. And so I just said, let me save that, because I think we might be able to do something with that at some point. And so I saved it. And lo and behold, here we are. But this is where it started. I wrote a post one day that said, when life gives you lemons, make lemonade, quote, end quote. Well, what happens when life is giving you so many lemons that you can't stand lemonade? Like, I really don't like lemonade. Here's what I had to do and still do. I made strawberry lemonade, peach lemonade, cherry lemonade, blackberry lemonade, iced tea lemonade. And when I got burned out on that, I made lemon cake, lemon pound cake, lemon pie, lemon meringue pie, lemon cream pie, lemon up cake. What you know about that lemon up cake? I made lemon jello, lemon pudding. And when I gained too much weight from that, I made lemon marinades for my meats. I can make a banging carne asada marinade. You don't know nothing about that. And then I put lemon on my calamari. I made some lemon pepper chicken wings. I made lemon herb fish. I put lemon on my shrimp, lemon on my tacos. And when I thought I couldn't stand the sight of another damn lemon, I put them lemons to work and enhanced my cleaning techniques. The moral of the story is no matter how many lemons life throws your way, never, ever, ever give up. And one thing that I've learned is that all it takes is just a twinkle of light at the end of a dark tunnel to give me just a little bit of hope that'll take me a long, long, long way. And so as we go on this Lemonnader's journey together, there is no appreciation for light without the experience of darkness. And I've had more than my share of dark moments in my life. But having had those dark moments causes me to honor the light and appreciate the light. And so I ask you to seek it out. The next time you're sitting in a dark room, shades drawn, you think there's no light, I want you to just seek it out and watch how light shows up, how it's peeking right behind those curtains, how it's coming in from the bottom of your door. It's always fighting to get through. It reminds me of the cartoon Inside Out, where all of those different emotions are going on inside that little girl. I took my children to the El Capitan Theater to see that cartoon. I like going to El Capitan because they do the live performance, and I always like my kids to have some experience of live art. And I remember sitting in that theater full of bubbly, giggling, noisy kids with tears streaming down my face. Because I realized that that little girl was inside me too. And the little girl inside of me was so full of sadness and anger and envy, wondering, why my life couldn't be like somebody else's. But what made me cry was how hard joy was fighting to get through. No matter what we're experiencing, joy is fighting to get through. Joy is on our side. And joy is achievable, even in the midst of sadness, even in the midst of depression, even in the midst of anxiety and loss and stress and unhappiness. Joy is there. And much like joy can be sought out, light can be sought out. And no matter how dark it's gotten in my life, I've always managed to seek out the light. And even beyond that, in so many instances, I've managed to be the light in so many people's lives. And one of the things that inspired me to do this podcast was just my desire to be the light and to let my light shine. And in doing so, there's about 8 billion people on this planet. I'm hoping to be able to reach at least one. I want you to keep on pushing. I promise every episode won't be that heavy, but I told you I was going to be me. In the same way, I want you to show up wherever you are. I want the same grace to be able to show up in this space and just be who I am and live in my truth. And, you know, it ain't always going to be a gangsta boogie up in here. Sometimes we're going to go deep. But doing that deep work is what's enabled me to be here. And I know that I'm not alone in some of these experiences. And I want you to know that you're not alone either. And I want to honor you with where you are. And I've never wanted to be one of those speakers or one of those personalities out there that just felt like they got to be happy-go-lucky all the time. And every time you ask them how they're doing, they're like, I'm blessed and highly favored. Well, I'm not any less blessed. And I'm not any less favored because I'm going through some shit. And so I'm just going to keep it 100. And I'm going to be me. And so I just want you to know that until we come together again, whatever lemons come your way, don't allow it to make you sour. Don't allow it to cause you to pucker. I want you to do what you need to do to put them to work and make it count. Make sure it matters. Don't let it all be for nothing. Do the work. Dig deep. Heal. And show up. I'll see y'all next time. Hey, my lemonaders, I just want to make sure that you share this information with somebody that may be going through it right now. If you felt something, if this impacted you, if this made a difference in your life, I want you to share it so that we can get the information out there. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and make sure that you hit that notification bell so that you are notified when we have new episodes. Take care, and until next time, lemonaders, squeeze up.